Between this and Pinocchio, I think Guillermo Del Toro is a master of adapting movies. Obviously, many people see remakes as a bad thing and assign that Hollywood has run out of ideas, which any person who's watched more than 5 movies a year would know is not true. I think Guillermo Del Toro proves here that not only can remakes be great, they can improve on the original. The word I'd rather use to describe this film is reimagining. Not only does he give this film a unique visual look and tone, but also adds layers to the story. I like what he did with Pinocchio, where he made sure to make the characters more complex, and that feeling gives a backstory to Geppetto, with his son dying and him wanting a new son. He ties in themes of fascism to the film and how that affects the characters. He gives the film an entirely different message and theme from the Disney classic, which I prefer and actually works nicely for the story. It also explores Pinocchio's immortality and the themes of life and death, something that this film explores. Let's go back to Frankenstein before this becomes a review of Pinocchio, because he's able to do this with Frankenstein as well. Victor Frankenstein, played really well by Oscar Issac, who I'll get to later, is very complex in this film and easily the best version of Frankenstein we've gotten. We actually see his childhood and are given a motivation as to why he wants to create Frankenstein. His mother died when he was pretty young, and his dad was very strict and cold to him. And after feeling the loss of his mother, he decides to make his life mission to bring dead people back to life. That immediately makes his character more interesting, especially when we learn about his family. He has a brother who's far richer and more successful than him, while he's living in a smaller house with dirtier clothes, trying to make his invention like a madman. And again, Oscar Isaac does a lot to make him a really good character. Just the way he carries himself with determination to raise monster. The scene where he's having dinner with his brother and his fiance and his back is hunched over while they're sitting up straight. He gets a lot of characterization here, and later in the movie we see his darker side. And that's another thing this film does well. Victor is kind of an asshole in this movie. He tries to get with his brother's fiance, he's unsympathetic to the monster and straight up abuses him, and you see his ego grow as the film goes on, which makes sense when you consider he lost both of his parents as a kid and spent most of his life trying to do one experiment. Frankenstein has always come off as a morally great character in earlier adaptations of the story, so I'm glad they doubled down on it here. Christolph Waltz is also very good in this. It's just nice to see him in a movie. He hasn't been in a lot of stuff for a while, and even though he doesn't have a lot of screen time, he does make the most of it. He may have the funniest scenes in the movie, and he's the guy who gives Victor the money to do his experiments. I also like how the film kind of tricks you to make you think he's a bad guy, like he seems kind of calculating, antagonistic at times, trying to rush Victor to do his experiment. But as it turns out, he's just desperate because he's dying and he sees Victor's experiment as a way to save himself. I was not expecting that twist at all, but it makes sense and adds a lot to his character. Victor straight up telling him no to saving his life is pretty funny and once again shows what a douchebag he is. Also makes sense because his sickness spread into his lungs and organs and he can't be saved anymore. He tries to ruin the experiment in desperation, but slips and falls to his death. Again, the way the story unfolds is very unexpected for a remake. I also like the scenes where he's making the monster too. It's very gross and gory, and I'm kind of glad they didn't hold back on that aspect of the character. And Jacob Elordi is fantastic as a monster. His voice, his height, the makeup, how he walks and just presents himself is just really convincing as this guy who was just created like yesterday. Victor is starting to get mad at the monster, not learning as quickly as he wants and chaining him to the basement shows how Victor doesn't see him or treat him like a living being. You can actually see parallels to how he tries to teach the monster to how his own father taught him. That's why I wouldn't call Victor a straight up villain of the story, because Guillermo del Toro makes sure to show you his upbringing so you can see why he acts the way he does and his perspective in the story. He can't be a good father to the monster because he didn't have a good father on his own. That's when Elizabeth, his brother's fiancée played by Mia Goth, plays a big part in the story. She shows a lot more empathy to the monster and treats him better. I think this causes some jealousy in Victor as he sees them connect with each other. That combined with the monster not getting any smarter makes him decide to destroy it in the rest of the lab. The scene where he's leaving the burning building and for a moment changes his mind and runs back only to lose his leg in the explosion is a really good scene, once again showing that he's not a straight up monster. Anyways, this film actually isn't structured the way I described it. It starts with a ship crew stranded in the North Pole and saving Victor, and the monster chases him. We get a really cool fight scene of the entire crew fighting the monster, and the first half of the movie is an injured Victor telling the ship captain his perspective. Then the monster comes in and speaking full English tells him his perspective. I really like how it's structured this way, as for the first half of this film, Victor is the protagonist, and the second half, the monster is the protagonist. We see the monster hide out in a cabin where a family lives, one member of the family being an old blind man. The minute I saw the blind man, I knew Guillermo was taking from the original with that scene where the blind man can't see him and therefore isn't afraid of the monster, and therefore they become friends. I knew he was going to include this aspect going in, as it's such a bittersweet part of the original story. I haven't mentioned this yet, but even though the film is dark and gory, it has a lot of heart and emotion in it. I like that about Guillermo del Toro. His films can be dark and tragic, but he remembers to add heart heart to his films to even it out. Through The Blind Man, he learns how to talk and read. David Bradley also did a really good job as a blind man. I immediately recognized his voice as Geppetto from Pinocchio. I'm happy to see him in another Del Toro movie. The scene where he dies was really sad and pulled on the heartstrings. Again, a film can be dark and bleak, but only works if there's heartfelt moments to build up to that bleakness. The monster finds Victor in his brother's mansion on the night of Elizabeth's wedding. She still hates Victor for destroying the monster and knows he's lying about her uncle. The monster asks Victor in his room to make him a companion so he won't be alone, but Victor doesn't want to. It can kinda see why he doesn't want to create more immortal monsters in the world, but he once again acts like a douche to the monster and yells at him to leave. At the scene before this, you have Elizabeth slapping him and hating his guts, so once again you can kinda see how his obsession with Elizabeth causes him to lash out on the monster. Maybe if the monster didn't come right after that, Victor would consider helping him. This leads to the monster throwing him around the house, and if I have one complaint about this movie, Victor takes way too many beatings. Like, you think he's Johnny Knoxville with how many times he breaks a bone or gets thrown to a wall with full force. I mean, it's not like this is a realistic movie to begin with, but after a while, you gotta wonder, how's this guy not in a wheelchair? Like, Jesus Christ. Anyways, Elizabeth sees the monster, and Victor picks up a gun to shoot him. As you expect, Elizabeth is shot instead, and the rest of the people at the wedding wait till the worst possible moment to come in and sees Elizabeth bleeding in the monster's arms. The monster kills the brother and carries Elizabeth out of the room. The scene where the brother tells Victor that he was scared of him this whole time and that he's a real monster is a really good scene and a highlight for a character that really didn't get to do much in this film. The monster also loses someone he cares about in Elizabeth, who dies in his arms. But now both Victor and the monster are angry at each other, and you can kind of see both points of views. That's another thing I love about this film. There's no clear antagonist. Victor is an asshole, yes, but the thing you create to kill your brother, you'd be pissed off too. And the monster, being far more sympathetic than Victor, also kills a lot more innocent people. At the end of the day, this movie is a tragedy in the same vein as Pan's Labyrinth. So Victor hunts the monster to the North Pole, and we get back to the ship. Victor, after listening to his story, finally has sympathy for the monster and says he's sorry for everything before dying. And don't get me wrong, it's a satisfying and bittersweet way to end the film that's very well written, but I do think the change of heart is a little bit too sudden. In hindsight, it makes some sense if you consider that Victor ran back into the house to save the monster before it explodes. I do wish while the monster was telling the story, we saw Victor's reaction to what he was saying and see him realize that the monster is a bad person in real time. But still a really good ending. The monster making peace with the crew and pushing their ship out into the ocean is a nice touch and great moment to bookend his character. The whole film he tries to come to terms with what he is and how he's immortal. At the end, he decides to help the crew. He won't be the monster people see him as, but the person he wants to be. So yeah, a really good film. If you haven't seen it yet, what the hell are you doing? Why did you watch this whole video? I was spoiling it like the whole time. You had every opportunity to pause the video. But hey, it's still worth watching in a theater. Like, I only spoiled like 60% of it. There's a lot of great scenes in here. It's my favorite adaptation of Frankenstein and a top 3 film of the year. 9.7 out of 10. Watch it in a theater if you can. Also, the MCU video is coming out soon. I swear it's coming. Okay, it's like 50 movies. It's like 50 movies, only half of them are good. So just give me time. Give me time, okay? Give me time. I'm gonna go watch The Sopranos. Happy Halloween.